What's up, everybody? Jeff Sintel. We're going old school, I guess, a little bit from the Sintel family basement. Who was around? Who was joining us on Wednesday nights when we used to do this back in the day? Um, we're practicing our social distancing, of course. We're in the downstairs basement. We're going to talk about UGA recruiting. Anything you guys want to know? You got a question? You got a comment? You want to talk about anything related to Georgia football? Georgia recruiting especially, please feel free to weigh in. Hope everybody's doing great. Hope everybody is staying safe. Is everybody getting this quarantine feeling down like everybody else? Let me introduce you to, let me say hi. This is Peaches right here. Peaches, this is the Sintel family dog. Peaches, look out there. Hey, and at least we've got one viewer tonight, right? Peaches is here. She's on Before The Hedges on DogNation.com. Yes, her name is Peaches. Yes, my now 11-year-old son named her Peaches about 3 years ago. She's with us. We're going to hang out and talk about all things Georgia football and Georgia recruiting. Brandon's got a beard. That's his gimmick for broadcasting from home. I've got man's best friend, right? Peaches the dog. Hope everybody's doing well. First of all, I got to thank everybody from Kroger for continued partnership. We got to look at this, the new logoed up banner. We had to upgrade to the new style Kroger logo, and we got a white golden doodle here that fits in really well with the white background. She's going to ask some questions. She's probably going to be barking about a lot of things tonight, but hope you guys got a few minutes to sit here and talk about all things Georgia football. And what do you think, Peaches? You want to take some questions? First thing I want to talk about is just like what's going on right now here with Georgia football. I spoke to my good buddy Brandon Adams for his podcast earlier today, and man, there's really like a swirl of things that are happening, a swirl of things that are going on. I think the main thing you got to think about is how this changes everything. Folks start wondering about, okay, is G-Day going to happen? Not likely. Is spring practice going to happen? Not likely. When will things return to normal? You hear our world leaders and country's leaders talking about August, talking about 8 weeks, 10 weeks. When's it all going to come back to normal? It's going to be very interesting. But from, the things that readily pop into my mind are like, for instance, high school graduation. Like if there's any recruits out there that were definitely working towards making sure they handled their business in their classroom to be eligible, that's something without that hands-on and tutoring and everything else, maybe their SAT prep courses, maybe their ACT prep courses. That's something I think about. I think about a guy like Trey McKitty, who's scheduled to be a graduate transfer from Florida State, so he can show up and play tight end for Georgia for one more season of college football. Lots of folks thinking he's going to contend for a lot of playing time, especially in Georgia's multiple tight end, two tight end sets. So that's something. How will this affect a guy like Trey McKitty graduating? That's a question I have. The main thing for like high school players is it really slows down their clock for a lot of guys. Slows down like when they're going to be able to make their decision. They probably needed to make a lot of their own. They probably needed to make a lot of their own decisions about, I need to see this school, I need to see that school, I need to see that school. Maybe this will keep them from thinking about going to that far out school when there was already a school that they really kind of sort of liked but wanted to take their visits and everything else like that. So that's something to think about. The other thing I think about with these young players is I think about their bodies. There's players on every high school team that go from very good to great in that January, February, March, April, May of their junior year. There's even some players that go, that they hit the weight room, they work on their craft, they get a little bit bigger, faster, stronger, and they go from maybe a fringe Power 5 prospect to a clear Power 5 prospect, or they go from a certain Power 5 prospect to an SEC prospect. Those are the things I think about, how young men's bodies are not going to mature the way they used to, and even the guys on the Georgia team, how they're not going to mature the way they used to under this new climate. Of course, these are very fickle. These are very superficial things we think about when we wonder about Georgia football and Georgia recruiting and how that's all going to manage together and line up to what we used to expect it to be. Looks like Peaches has had enough of, she's going to go upstairs and find a treat. But anyway, the matter of the hour is, what's going on with Georgia recruiting. Just put up a post on the Dog Nation site. Hopefully you guys had a chance to read it. There's two backs that I've always kind of thought were the the A1A targets for Georgia in the 2020-21 recruiting cycle, and that would be Travion Henderson and Donovan Edwards. Don Ed is what, lots of his friends call him up in Michigan. He lives about 30 minutes from Michigan. He's got good friends, good personal relationship with a member of the Notre Dame team. He has 2 former teammates that are on the Michigan team. We had a story that went up today that shared some pretty interesting things. First and foremost, I think the one thing that Georgia fans will want to hear is Donovan Edwards said he's probably got only one school right now that has earned an official visit, and that would be the University of Georgia. When I asked him if there are any other schools out there that have earned an official visit, he told me he's probably not thought that deeply into a lot of the other schools there. That's something of interest. What he thinks about with Georgia is how well he fits into that new system, especially the Todd Monken system. Everybody wants to know about, hey, what's this guy like? Who does he play like? Well, Donovan Edwards rates as the nation's number 3 overall running back for the 2021 cycle, the number 38 overall prospect. He's a 4-star, not a 5. He's about 5'11" and 196, and his high school stats look like 1,300 yards rushing, 21 touchdowns, and 500 yards receiving. If you want to think about Monken and Georgia and the skill set, the name that comes to my mind is Ito Smith. Ito Smith was in Monken's program and in Monken's offense way back for the 2015 Southern Miss Golden Eagles. And Monken led an offense. Monken's offense had a 4,400-yard passer in Nick Mullins, who's now a backup in the NFL for the San Francisco 49ers. 4,400 yards. Then they had 2 running backs that went over 1,000 yards. One of those backs was Ito Smith, who had a 500-yard receiving season. And then through the air, Southern Miss had a 1,300-yard receiver, a 900-yard receiver, a 700-yard receiver, and then another 500-yard receiver in Ito Smith. And that's the sort of things when Monken sat Donovan Edwards down, he was wondering, this is an NFL fit. This is how you fit in my offense. And he showed Mr. Edwards, he showed Donovan some NFL clips of the Bucks, NFL clips of the Browns, and that's always impressive when a play caller can show NFL offenses that a play caller has coordinated, because everybody wants to get to that next level. All right, guys, if you're just joining us again, I'm Jeff Sintel. Welcome to our Before the Hedges program, brought to you by Kroger. I shared a couple of opening thoughts about Donovan Edwards in that recent story we put up on DogNation.com. Player to watch, name to watch in the 2020 recruiting cycle. Donovan tells me that he's not going to make his decision anytime soon. He's going to take his official visits, but he's going to be an early enrollee. It's kind of funny how all of the major imperative targets for Georgia in the 2021 class are looking like early enrollees. That's something to consider there as well. Our broadcast is brought to you by Kroger. Kroger is, let's just give a quick thumbs up. And I want to make sure you guys are hearing me well, of course, but listen to me on this. Whatever grocery store you frequent, including those fine folks at Kroger, man, people that are stepping up, people that are doing more, people that are really taking care of us and making sure we have the basic needs of society to go on through this difficult time during this unprecedented time in our nation's history, at least for a lot of people that are my age and younger. Your grocery store, when you go there, they have what you need. They start getting your meats, they start getting your beef, they start getting your chicken. They have that stuff in the freezer. I know my wife felt a little bit more back to normal when they had everything that you're looking for. And one little small measure of hope is like in our neighborhood, what we've done here in Woodstock is people are making a lot of food runs for a lot of people. Like sometimes it's been hit or miss with the meats and the selections. And one of the things my family has done and other families have done is that they found something for others and like, oh, you need some of this. Oh, you need some of that. And everybody's pitched in and tried to oblige. Social distancing, that's one of the things we're going to think about as we try to have a normal, regular recruiting chat like we always do here on Dog Nation. What's something you guys have done? I would stress that you got to get out, you got to get the heart beating, you got to do something. You just feel better, whether it's walking, whether it's hitting some golf balls, whether it's going to the driving range, whether it's getting on your spin cycle, getting on your exercise bike, whether it's just walking your dog around your neighborhood. Something I think I've found that it helps a lot. Even when you're trying to write a story, you're trying to keep folks updated on the Dog Nation message board forum. Funny, Mark Godfrey. Hey, good evening to you. Good evening to you, sir, as well. Stephen Carr says, thanks, Jeff. This no sports things is no good. Glad I got an old game on my DVR for my fix. Yeah, I got a buddy. He's ripping through some cotton bowls right now. I think he's got basically all the cotton bowls ever on his DVR, and he's going through all those right now. He's going through all the Georgia games he has on DVR. I think a lot of folks on the Dog Nation forum, somebody mentioned this week that they were watching that 2013 LSU Georgia game, trying to stay busy. Sonia Prescott, that's a golden doodle. She's got a little golden tint to her right there. She's golden and half doodle. She's about 3 years old. Robert Reynolds, yeah, man, I know it is. This is weird, but it's better than nothing. David West is weighing in from Campobello, South Carolina. Matt Talley, yeah, man, I just try to make things normal. Jarvis Hannah, how are you? Throwing a lot of shout outs around. Jody Maddox dreams about a national championship. Mark Godfrey, no, Peaches cannot go on the recruiting trail. Yeah, Jacob O'Neill, yeah, that's funny. BA's got a squirrel, and I got a family pet. Traw Dukes, man, how are you? Jessica M. Huth hopes football doesn't get canceled. We all do. Jarvis Hannah is playing Call of Duty Black Ops. Joel Moody, yeah, touchdown Travion. He's got some sick film. We talk about Travion Henderson. He had 53 touchdowns on his junior film. I looked through every one of them, man. It was almost like the first 35 of them went an average of 40 yards. All those clips were very impressive. Colby Curry, yeah, no, it definitely feels like old times for sure with everything going on. So, one of the things I wanted to bring up, and I hope you guys saw the story we wrote about Cade Brock earlier this week. Man, Cade Brock is just a dude. It's somebody that, I felt even in this climate of, we want to tell more stories. We want to maybe come back to things that we hadn't shared with you guys yet. I've been wanting to write about Cade for some time, because when you saw him up in the stands, when you saw him, what he meant to the class, and it wasn't just his buddy Tate Ratledge and how tough he was and how country strong he is, just the kind of way he already fit into the class, and he drew respect from guys like Austin Blasky, Nazir Stackhouse, Cedric Von Pron Granger. Cedric told me that basically those two guys talk every day, and they've spoken almost every day since really he became a part of the class back in August. Cade is a guy that was so funny, that story we were able to share about him being a longtime Georgia fan. Tate Ratledge was a longtime Tennessee fan. How they basically fought at a drop of a hat at all times. It was very interesting getting to learn all their stories, and how maybe Cade Brock, once there was that limbo period there for Tate Ratledge with Tennessee, and was it Tennessee, was it Clemson? What was going to happen when Sam Pittman left for Arkansas? Cade Brock was at his house. He called him that night, and he really started working for Georgia, trying to keep Tate Ratledge in the class as well. I want to make sure everybody's picking me up. My computer has froze. That's always a good thing. Things to think about. With everything going on here in Dog Nation. Let me just check 1 second. When my computer freezes, I want to make sure you guys are still around, and that the broadcast hasn't frozen as well. All right, we're good. So Going to deal with a restarted computer. That's what I'm going to deal with right now, so I can be able to interact and catch up with everybody's questions. I normally have an iPad that I use with the phone, and let me see if I can. Bring in a one of my technicians or somebody behind the scenes. Maybe they're listening on the broadcast as well. Maybe I can get one of our crack staff here at Centel's underground broadcast basement to maybe bring me that iPad as well as a backup plan when your computer crashes. One of the things I wanted to get to is I wanted to talk about the top targets. I know we don't have the fancy graphics that Connor Riley and Michael Carvel create for us every week, but you know, one of the things is obviously the situation. Evan Pryor commits to Ohio State. He comes off our top targets. Donovan Edwards comes in out of Michigan. There's been some interesting things. Georgia's still recruiting. I think they're basically doing a lot of FaceTiming. They're doing a lot of texting. I know I spoke to a lot of players that Georgia's chiefly interested in. Maliki Matavao was telling me that he basically tries to go find a field wherever he can get to a field and run routes by himself, run routes with friends. He says he's doing a lot of FaceTiming. A lot of coaches are weighing in. You know, one of the things he was going to do, Matavao was he was planning to take a big visit to Georgia April 15th, 16th, 17th, and now that one's definitely got kiboshed as well. So, you know, he's a guy that's his plans, like everybody's recruiting plans, have been put on hold as well. Thank you there, Hannah.
No problem.
But you know, one of the things that everybody's doing is they're just trying to find a way to stay normal. Whether it's their coaches sending them workouts. You know, one of the things that folks don't think about with this, coronavirus and how it affects, simple pieces of our daily lives is, a lot of high school players, maybe the best meal, and it's sad to say this, but maybe the best meal they get every day comes from their high schools. That's their best meal. Sometimes they have 2 lunches. They get a protein bar when they work out. They have a peanut butter and jelly sandwiches after they work out, because what these programs want to do is they want to basically feed these young men to go chase championships. They want to create a shell of armor around them by putting on the good weight they need in order to go out and compete and win in the fall. And a lot of that work happens right now. And for a lot of those young men, they're not getting the protein bars. They're not getting the daily lunches from their schools. So they're not getting the protein intake. They're not getting the calorie intake. I know a bunch of schools around the state and around the country that they're finding ways with food drops or going to go visit their kids, and they're finding ways to get their young players fed, whether it means they drop off a bunch of protein bars or, I know one good coach in the state of Georgia, offensive line coach, I believe, he heard about a player that wasn't eating a lot and wasn't getting a lot to eat, and their pantries were kind of bare. So he smoked a Boston butt, and he brought that to that player's family for them to be able to eat over the weekend and be able to get some food to kind of hang out through this quarantine time and everything else like that. That's one of the things where, that it's going to affect the news cycle a lot here. That's going to affect the normal maturation cycle of a high school football recruit. Also, you're going to see there's got to be a switch in the calendar where the visit periods, the evaluation periods are going to have to shift. Does that mean taking time away from June, adding time in June, adding time in July? Does that mean coaches giving up summer vacations? I spoke to a couple coaches this week that said, whenever it gets back to normal or gets back to green light, everybody's going to try and cram and prepare to get ready for their seasons as much as possible. And maybe their family vacation might be sacrificed as well. Those are the things I'm kind of hearing going on with a lot of these players. A lot of these young men are going to have to take it upon themselves to, work out on their own, work out independently. They're going to have to maybe chop down trees in their neighborhood or in the woods, or they're going to have to get together at a neighborhood park, whatever is open, so they would be able to, work on timing, work on routes, work on a few install concepts, and everything else like that. Just very interesting times for the way we're used to going about our business with all this. let's see. The names. I'm just kind of going to go 1 to 10. I still this week, if we had our full flashy graphics, package, number one top target for the 2021 class, still Tony Grimes. Still going to make his commitment on December the 1st. Still a very special player, special young man on and off the field. The number 2 guy on our list is Amarius Mims. Amarius sounds like he's ready to make an edit and start maybe trimming down his top schools list as well. Number 3 on the list is James Williams. That's the 5-star safety out of South Florida. Number 4, every week I almost think about flipping Barrett Carter at 4 and James Williams at 3, just because I think Barrett's a very special football player. I think he's going to bring all the intangibles. He's going to bring the hard work, the character, the ethic. I think he's going to be an incredible 3-down linebacker, a guy that can hang with tight ends and hang receivers, and also get in there and fly downhill and fill A gap, B gap, and try to get to the ball carriers out on the edge as well. He can blitz. He really checks a lot of boxes for me, especially as an inside linebacker type. Of course, he's not 6'4" and 235, but just about everything else. I can see Barrett Carter playing a similar role early to what Nakobe Dean did for Georgia during his freshman year. And Nakobe played a lot. I think he would have played a lot more if he wouldn't have had that early injury. With his heading into his true freshman season. All right, guys, I want to come back. I think my laptop is up and running. Can't believe Chrome cranking out on me and everything else like that. Yeah, Mike Zambiasi, that's one of the things I think. It's not an example of woe is me. I'm going to read your full comment first, but many great opportunities to help others. It's the cure for selfish and self-centered tendencies. Just pray for guidance. Love our dog family. I don't know if you guys are like me, but one of the things I always think about and struggle with my walk is, what can I do besides my job? What can I do besides do my job well? How can I help others? Sometimes I sit and stop and think, what's something I can do? What's something that, I would almost think, what can appear in my life where I can make a difference? And I pray to, be able to recognize those opportunities about, I can tell you whatever mood you're in, if you were to do a solid for somebody, to help a family, go on a grocery run, help somebody that needs help right now, because we're all not in the same shape. That certainly means a lot. Certainly means a lot to someone. And Mike, I surely appreciate your comment you had right there as well. TJ Ben has a question. Does UGA, the NCAA, or even the SEC plan on rescheduling the G-Day game? No, I don't think that's, there's some things out today that came out from Greg Sankey, the SEC commissioner, which sounded like a little bit of a pivot from where things are right now. Ideally, if everything came back to normal, what could happen is, if everything can come back to normal, what could happen was we would have a chance in, maybe a restructuring of the calendar, a reshifting of the calendar, where the Bulldogs would be able to have a G-Day at a later time and hold spring practice at a later time. But I think those college coaches are kind of mirror what a lot of the things I'm hearing from high school coaches right now are saying, and that's, as long as everybody else is not started and not working, then we feel better about where we're at and where we're not at. It's just when they see, the thought of other schools getting better while they couldn't get better is something that would be a worry to a lot of folks. I think the Georgia Twitter account established a very good baseline way of thinking by saying, this is not the time to attack the day and winning the SEC and getting better than Florida and getting ready to beat Virginia right now. This is a time to serve all of our communities, and I think that was a fine sentiment that was expressed right there. And somehow Georgia was able to rally its community a little bit and the Dog Nation fan base with a message of something other than attack the day or do more and everything else like that. I think all of us will come out of this feeling a little bit different about the way we look at the world, the way we look at traffic, the way we look at a line in Starbucks, the way we look at getting a chance to go to a park, the way we look at going to a theme park. I think we will all cherish things a little bit more in our very privileged society. Jacob O'Neill, you've been watching old games on ESPNU. What games have you been watching? Do you have a favorite one you rewatch? I think one of the things that everybody's doing in the Dog Nation forum is they're trying to figure out, one of the things we're trying to do is we're trying to establish a Dog Nation forum kind of movie club where we all figure out, okay, this is the movie we're going to watch, or we pick out 4 or 5 that nobody has seen lately. Things like, Wind River, Baby Driver, things like, I want to say Hell or High Water, maybe the movie Drive, and lots of those obscure movies that are actually really good watches, and we all come back and try to watch it together and have like a movie club. One of the things I said I was going to do on the forum is, that sort of thing reminds me of something Georgia legend Larry Munson did during his twilight years and his golden years while he would move back to Athens. Is you gotta fancy Mr. Munson for this, because he found a way on Sundays to establish a movie watching club, and usually it was with a couple of Georgia sororities where they'd all go out to, I believe it was Beechwood or Alps, and they'd go watch a movie together. They'd go by and get coffee afterward, and they'd just go watch a really good movie and hang out. And, there's many things that can be said about that. I think one of the coolest things is, Larry Munson found a way to spend his off-season time very well watching movies, getting to know the young Georgia fans as well. And all those girls I know that got a chance, those young women that got a chance to hang out with a Georgia legend, besides hobnail boots, and besides, look at the sugar falling from the sky, and I've lit the cigar. I'm sure that's a special lifelong memory for a lot of folks. Alan and Jennifer Intricate. Hey, how was that? Yeah, one of the things, I never thought I would go 12 minutes on a video with Gabe Mays and, Kate Brock and Tate Ratledge and Tommy Atta, those kind of pillars of the Darlington football program over the last couple of years. But the guy's just so entertaining. Like, if you saw the story, it was so funny because literally Cade Brock was the type of guy that was, hey, you need me to take my shirt off, I can do that. He's kind of goosing Tate Ratledge as well, about talking about how fat everybody was and how much he hated him because he used to be a Tennessee fan. If you're ever around young people, you're ever around a locker room, if you're ever around, even when you get together with some of your old friends and everybody starts getting everybody's goat and kind of gigging each other a little bit, that's just guys being guys. And when you think of things like that, that becomes more of a fabric of our normal life than what we're dealing with right now. Clay Dykes, yeah, that was a great video letter that Kirby Smart posted as well. Mike Jones, yeah, that's one of the things I'm trying to do, get to Bradshaw Farms. It's only about 10 miles away from me, maybe about 10 minutes, about 6 miles away from me. If I can just get there every day and hit the driving range for a little bit, maybe play 9 holes, maybe walk a little bit, that to me is good. And I think golf is the perfect example of social distancing. One of the things I've done with my kids is we try to do, every day, we try to do some sort of daddy school, mommy school type thing. The community we live in, we've established, one night we watched Stand By Me, and even though that movie was made about, back in the 1950s and included and it was funny watching the movie with my kids, and they heard songs like Lollipop come on, and somehow they sang along, and they wanted to know about that body that was missing, that they go chasing down on the train tracks. That was a good movie. I think we want to watch Facing with the Giants sometime soon. Find those movies, find those ways to connect with your kids. I know we've played Ticket to Ride, that game before. If you've never played that with your family, that's funny. We played Blank Slate last night. One of our favorite games, ideally, is a game, it's very complicated. It's called Pandemic. I don't know if you've ever played that, but that is a very interesting thinking person's game where there's a problem and all 4 members are working together trying to beat the problem. And this problem just so happens to be an infectious disease that's spreading across the world. So, that's the things that we try to do. We've played some tennis every night. That's one of the things we try to do in order to, it's funny, I think Benjamin Watson, the great Bulldog, the great NFL guy, incredible book that he wrote, incredible books that he's written. One of those about, kind of a roadmap for being a father. In other words, another book he wrote was about race relations in our country. But one of the things he pointed out was that he was a December birthday, and he kind of thought that you're going to see a spike in December births and December deliveries because of everything that's going on. I think initially one of the things I tried to tell my family is like, hey, just imagine that there's 12 inches of snow out on the ground or 17 inches of snow out on the ground. To me, it sort of felt like the blizzard of 1993 with all that. Somchai Rungring, sorry if I didn't get that name right. He wants to know what big-time wide receivers coming to Georgia with Brock V. I think the name to think about right now for the receiver front is Mario Williams. He just established the top 5. Georgia made his top 5. Georgia was certainly in there. Georgia's a school that's something to think about. Seth Collett has a question. Hey, Jeff, a name we haven't heard of from the 2017 class is Trey Blunt. You know any news on him and if he will break out? Trey's a player that I've kind of wanted to see him flap his wings. You kind of hear different things about Trey, like is he a safety? Is he a defensive back? Does he want to give it one more go and one more try? Because he played so much during that 2017 season. But if you look at his contribution so far to this point at Georgia, number one, I do think he's got a little bit more to show folks. But number two, is he's been mostly as a blocker. And that's a guy that you look at and you wonder, how does he fit into this new air raid type or air raid tendency Georgia offense? I think a player to me that immediately jumps out as a guy that can make a move is Kearis Jackson. Kearis, I think, was maybe primed to do a lot more in 2019, should he have not suffered that early injury, and he had the early elbow injury as well, where he broke his wrist and everything else. And it seemed like it kind of got him off stride for his entire redshirt freshman season. Kearis Jackson's a guy, everybody always asks me about the freshmen and the guys that I think will play right away and play immediately. I think Keely Ringo will play immediately. I think Kendall Milton will play immediately. I look at Cedric Von Granger as a guy that plays immediately. Jermaine Burton is a guy, if you look at the wide receiver position, man, that guy's awful some kind of good. He's prepared. He handles his work. He's going in with a business mindset. It's going to be hard for even the best cornerbacks in the SEC, especially the number 3 or 4 corner on an SEC program, to be able to shadow him and mirror him and stick with him. Jermaine Burton, I see very big things up ahead for him as well. And, let's be real here. Everybody can tot out all these skill players. They can say Jamie Newman. They can say Carson Beck. The player that should play the most and is expected to play the most is Jared Zirkle. That's the kicker out of Texas to me. That's the guy that I think has the earliest line on a starting job because that's what he's been brought in to do. Now, he's going to be a blue shirt. We spoke about that. We wrote about Jared about 2 weeks ago, how he's going to be on his own dime for about 2 or 3 months when he reports in late May, early June. And then he's going to go on scholarship in August, and his scholarship will count towards the 2021 class. Jared Zirkle, he had a 59-yard field goal in an actual living, breathing high school football game. I think immediately he's going to have one of the strongest kickoff legs in the SEC. I think it will be a longer learning curve, or not as easy as a learning curve for Jared Zirkle to learn how to kick adeptly and proficiently and efficiently in the SEC. Let me see if I can get through some more questions. First of all, thanks to everybody for joining me. I want to make sure everybody can hear me okay. Is the sound coming on okay? This is our first kind of rebooted broadcast with doing it in my basement. We'll probably do this for the next couple of weeks or so, but I want to make sure you guys can hear me okay, whether I'm coming through my Bluetooth headset or through the microphone in my camera phone. I want to make sure everybody can hear me okay. If everybody can hear me okay, can you get a quick thumbs up? Can I get a quick peaches? Can I get a quick DGD or whatever? Just let me know you guys can hear me okay. Alan and Jennifer Intricate, thank you so much. Jan Armstead, Ben Watson, yeah, I gotta agree with all that. You think about people that need to pursue political office in our country, and Ben Watson is a name to me that just really jumps to mind. Steve Weimer, how are you? Oh, wow, I didn't know that. Cade Brock is Jennifer's cousin, man. That's great. He's a really fun guy. Really, he's just one of those guys that you're going somewhere with your pack of buddies and like wherever you're going, and if you know a guy like Cade with his over-the-top personality is going to be there, it just makes the trip better. I enjoyed sharing his story about how he was really goofing around with Darnell Washington because he didn't know who Ric Flair was, and how he says a lot of the culture with all these big players is like everybody treats them like they're something that they're not. I thought he had a great line where he talked about Cade Brock where he's like, if you're the best plumber in the electric community, does that mean people, come sign autographs or they blow you up just because you're good at what you do? He's like, there's still regular people beyond that. And he's like, to me, they're all the same. He says, I tell all of them that I can whoop all their tails. And if you know Cade Brock even just a little bit, that comment right there, that quote is pure Cade Brock. Oh, we got a guest coming in here, my man Kyle. Kyle, you got a message? What's up?
Mom wants you to get ice cream from Kroger's.
All right, so I guess we got 5 minutes. Kyle just gave me a 5-minute warning. I got a honey-do list. I hope you guys are knocking out all your honey-do list as well. I just got a message, some intel from upstairs in the house that I got to make a run to Kroger to pick up some ice cream. Hey, Kyle, thanks, buddy, for sharing that with me, man. Tom Hopkins, man, thank you so much for that. You guys got any questions? Hit me with it. Let me know what's going on. Joel Moody, you're right about Shmile Carter, Shmile Munden, Baird Carter, and Ranieria Dilworth. That would be the best group of linebackers you can imagine in this recruiting class. I would agree. I think Alabama and North Carolina are also in the mix there as well. I think Alabama gave Ranieria a lot to think about as well as he goes forward with his decisions. Remember, he was wanting to make his commitment on April 17th. That's his grandmother's birthday. It would be a silent commitment. And then he wants to announce his commitment on May the 9th, I believe. So that stuff is very much up in the air. I asked him recently if all these changes affect his decision plan and his path. And he was like, he has to think about a lot of that. Randy Payne, Go Dogs from Tipton, Georgia. Ken Feinberg, man, thank you for joining us. Reginald Johnson. So Mason Smith is a guy that I'm very interested in because, when he started hitting the camp circuit, number one, Mason Smith was a defensive lineman who was dominant, and he was at the opening as a junior. Whenever you see a guy like goes to the opening as a junior, you know that that's a special young man. LSU, that's the team that's going to be the hardest to beat because he's a home state Louisiana kid from the boot state. But Georgia's doing a little bit more with kids from Louisiana. You mentioned guys like Darren Branch. You've got Micaiah Tongue. You've got Cedric Von Pron Granger. Georgia's starting to establish, more of a pipeline foothold in the state of Louisiana. And Mason Smith is a guy. He was going to take a visit to Georgia this month, and I'm sure Georgia would have knocked that visit out of the park. They would have made it feel like a true priority in the class. Be very interesting. Georgia's going to get an official visit from Mason Smith. And, when you look at Mason Smith, he is the type of player that you can put in there with the Jalen Carter, and you can put in there with the Trayvon Walker type category. The guy that's going to come in with a body that's ready to roll in the SEC and earn some playing time. Jerry Popham says, I don't have a really good audio stream right now on Facebook. Sorry about that. I'm going to try and speak louder. Hopefully it's working coming through my Bluetooth or through the microphone as well. Randy Hall, you bring up Tim Keenan. Tim Keenan's told me that he's going to take as long as possible as it takes for him to make a decision. Be very interesting because that young man has taken over 30 visits to Alabama. He lives in Birmingham, Alabama. He's been going there since he was a freshman. But he did say that he really likes what he's seen at Georgia, how Georgia appeals to him. And he also said the Scott Cochran move definitely added a little bit more oomph or a little bit more consideration to what Georgia will have to offer because everybody likes the fact that Cochran is now on the Georgia staff. All right, guys. Hey, want to say thanks to everybody for hanging out with us today and tonight. I know it's been another interesting Wednesday night, different Wednesday night, but it's good kind of different. Somehow I think something out of this that comes out of this is we'll all probably feel a little closer to our families from that. That's what I remember when I was a kid when the blizzard of '93 happens. One thing I want to talk about is Kroger store hours. I've got to go make a Kroger run to get some ice cream. You heard my son Kyle add to my honey-do list right there. But Kroger store hours as of today will be 8 a.m. to 9 p.m. Also, the fuel centers are 5 a.m. to 9 p.m. Fuel centers are 5 a.m. to 9 p.m. But Kroger store hours as of today are 8 a.m. to 9 p.m. And one of the things, like we said earlier in the broadcast, is when you go into that grocery store, I want you to kind of look at those folks like maybe those guys are five-star recruits. Maybe those young women, those young men, those Kroger associates or any grocery store you're at are the five-star recruits this time because they're making plays, they're making a difference. The things that they're doing to come in, I love what some grocery stores are doing across the country where they're having dedicated hours for senior citizens to come in, where they can come in, not feel rushed, but also not be exposed to everybody else from other age demographics as well. Those folks and what they're doing, they're hiring all the time. Their workers, their employee pools, they're beyond capacity. They cannot serve their public with enough product right now, and they're definitely working their tails off, and they're definitely doing a lot to make sure our communities are so propped up because as long as there's food, bread, milk, and everything else, with everybody having to feed their young people at home, I think people are all right. But when people start having to wonder and worry about, maybe someone hoarded something, or maybe there's not enough there, or maybe the supply chains have been halted a little bit, I think that is when that's when all of us start to look at this a different way, and it's harder for all of us to look at us the right way because in the end we all think about as as parents, as moms, as dads, one of the basic necessities is be able to make sure there's food for everybody on the table during this time, and everybody get your rest, everybody work out, and one of the things, everybody beef up that immune system so everybody can find a way to kind of combat this thing and kind of ride the wave and go with the flow of every little bit of this. Thanks to everybody for joining us. Thanks to Kroger. Special thanks to Kroger for everything they're doing right now, like I just said, to prop up communities and stabilize a little bit of the anxiety and worry and everything else right now. If you just heard my son, I got to go make a Kroger run right now as it is. But thanks to everybody for joining us. Thanks for joining us on a special kind of old school Centel's Basement edition of Wednesday Night Live, which is that became the Before the Hedges program. I'm glad everybody out there got to meet our golden doodle Peaches as well. And from my family to yours, stay safe, stay well. We're going to get through this. We're going to be just fine. And everybody out there, have yourselves a very good evening and a very good week. And we'll talk to you again real soon.